One of the best documented and most famous encounters by military personnel with a UFO occurred between December 26 and December 28, 1980, in Rendlesham Forest in the United Kingdom, near two air bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge, which were at the time leased to the United States Air Force. At approximately 3 a.m. on the 26th, a U.S. Air Force security patrol observed strange lights above the forest. A 3-man security unit was dispatched from Bentwaters to investigate. All 3 men closed in on an object that resembled an aircraft on fire. The senior NCO, Sergeant Jim Peniston, claimed that he got close enough to see a structured object. There was then a silent explosion of light, and the object disappeared in a blur towards the coast. The following evening, strange lights were again seen in the forest. The Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, took a squad out to investigate. What he saw that night continues to defy explanation.
It appeared to be like an eye. That's the best way I can describe it. Had a dark center and appeared to be dripping something molten, as though it were something pouring from like steel from a crucible. The object came even closer. It moved through the trees, going horizontal, up and down a little bit as it went. We were really in awe at this time. So we tried to get closer. We moved toward the object itself. The object receded out into the field. We watched it there in the field for a few minutes, and then it very silently exploded and broke into, I believe it was 5 white spheres, small spheres, and they just disappeared. While we're standing there in awe, one of the party members looks up and says, "Look in the sky." We looked up, and there to the north were several objects, 3 objects that were elliptical, and they had multi-colors. They were moving at high speed, at sharp angular movements, as though they were doing a grid search or something. I really can't say what for sure, but they were moving about quite rapidly. We noticed to the south there were several objects there. One particular one approached us at very, very high speed, probably 3,000 to 4,000 feet high, maybe a little more. Stopped almost directly overhead and sent a beam down to our feet. The interesting thing about the beam was the beam didn't radiate out. It was a steady beam, about 10, 12 inches in diameter. Not like a flashlight beam that spreads out as it goes. So obviously it wasn't a normal light beam, something more like a laser. We stood there in awe, quite concerned. Well, you know, was it signaling us, warning us, trying to injure us? We really weren't sure what it was trying to do, but we were really concerned at that point. And just as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared.
Rendlesham is Britain's best-known UFO incident. Arguably, it's one of the world's most important UFO cases. What makes it so important is that everything that makes a UFO case good happened here all at once. Firstly, you had an incident which happened over a series of different nights, so it's not just a one-off. Secondly, the witnesses, most of them were military, so you've got trained observers. Thirdly, you've got trace evidence, and this is absolutely critical. The UFO landed. Markings were found in the forest floor, where this thing had come down on a tripod-like device. And critically, when the base personnel checked this area with a Geiger counter, the radiation readings were assessed by the Defence Intelligence staff at the Ministry of Defence as being significantly higher than background.
It's just a very solid case in terms of all kinds of physical evidence, highly trained, reputable witnesses, everything you would want, except once again it's been muddied up. And once again, somebody in the government is lying about it and distorting the picture and hiding the truth.
In the quarter century since the Rendlesham case occurred, Charles Halt, who retired from the U.S. Air Force as a colonel, has come to the same conclusion, that there is much more to this case than meets the eye.
Several years later, I started running into people that were involved that I didn't realize were on the edge or had picked up bits and pieces from here. For instance, one of the radar operators in the tower at Eastern Radar, who had air defense responsibility for that sector, told me that they actually picked up objects on the screen that night and had them on tape, but somebody took the tape. Then a couple of the young troops came forward and said, you know, after the incident, the 3 people that were involved that went out and approached the craft were taken into a room and pumped full of drugs and given, hypnotized and debriefed, so to speak. And then I found out a mysterious C-141 landed soon thereafter with an unusual crew and all sorts of things. The aftermath is quite interesting. It was very obvious there was a great deal more interest than was ever publicly or openly admitted to anybody, including the senior officers on the base.
To this day, no one knows for sure what happened in Rendlesham Forest between December 26th and December 28th, 1980. But one thing seems certain. Whatever these Air Force personnel saw on those nights was something more mysterious and perhaps otherworldly than the government would like us, and even them, to believe.